Welcome to the podcast where relationships, confidence, and determination all converge into an amazing, heartfelt experience. This is Speaking from the Heart.
Welcome back to episode number 176 of Speaking from the Heart. Today we have Aeoliana Elliott with us. Aeoliana is a wife, hockey mom, paralegal, and podcast launch strategist. She loves helping people start their own podcast with confidence. Using her BECAME framework, which stands for balance, communication, authenticity, mindset mastery, and empowerment, she guides clients through finding their podcast idea, making their content great, and creating a solid plan. She can also help you understand how your thoughts shape your decisions and actions so that you can launch your own podcast confidently and make a real impact. And boy, did Aeoliana make an impact today, especially with her interview, sharing all kinds of things, turning from a probations correction career into what she does now to help others. I think that this conversation really reflects on a variety of different things, not just how we can help each other, not only how we can support ourselves in ways in which we can grow, but we all have something that we might feel like we're pretending to do. But through that pretending, which really is a script to say that we are really hiding ourselves from our true passion, we can find authenticity. We can find confidence and clarity. We want to be listened. And I think that when we hear from her story today, we're not only shining a light on finding that why of how we should be listened to, but that we can build a foundation along with a structure so that we can help people through that process to become able to do it themselves. This isn't any sort of coaching type episode. It isn't anything that we have really talked about on this show either, as it relates to her fascinating story of why we bring growth, why we build ourselves to help others. But I think that her story, amongst many others, sheds a light onto why we never close a door on each other, let alone ourselves. But with that, let's go to the episode. All right, we're here with Aeoliana Elliott. Aeoliana, thanks for sharing your heart with us today.
Thank you for having me, Josh.
Thank you for being here. And there's two things I have to start off with right away. First off, I'm so happy I said your name because we practiced it like 500 times before we even started the show. So I'm lucky that I nailed it twice in a row. But
Yay!
the other thing with this is that your business is meta to the whole reason of doing podcasting. And I love having this kind of conversation today. We haven't really dived into this sort of work here on Speaking from the Heart. So I'm super excited to have you on the show to kind of talk about not only your business, but also why you're doing everything. So I think the perfect question to kick this whole thing off is, what got you started into helping other people with their podcasts? And I know there has to be an amazing story behind this.
Okay, so we're going to go back to 2017. So in 2017, I was working as a probation officer, and I had a client who walked in with pneumonia. And I ended up with other health issues. I ended up contracting pneumonia. I got walking pneumonia. I spent 2 or 3 days in and out of the ER, 103 fever. And one day my mom decided to take me to the ER, and I called my husband and I said, I'm fine. We're just going to the ER. We're getting checked up. Everything's fine. My husband said, okay. He picked up our son from kindergarten. He said, I'll feed him, take him to your dad's, and then I'll meet you at the hospital. That was only like maybe 2.5 hours. When he got to the hospital, I was already in cardiac arrest. They were intubating me and putting me in a medically induced coma. I was in a coma for 5 days, I believe. The period between February 14th and February 26th, I have no memory of whatsoever. Apparently, I was septic. I had the walking pneumonia. And the hospital stay lasted an extra week once I woke up. And then it was 3 months of physical therapy learning how to walk, how to talk, how to write, how to do all of those things all over again. And then fast forward to 2019, I was hospitalized again with a double kidney infection twice in 3 months. And the job I was working for at the time is a different job, not probation. I would have gone into a different job. They let me go while I was in the hospital. So
Wow.
my husband was like, "You're not working as a paralegal anymore. You need to find something else." And that was right before the fabulous time in our lives called COVID. So I ended up getting a job with my brother in a construction company, and I was doing just admin work, really basic. But the drive was about 30 minutes from our house. So in those 30 minutes, I had always listened to podcasts. I love true crime podcasts. And I just, in my drive, I was like, let's listen to podcasts. What else am I going to do? 30 minutes going, 30 minutes coming back. And so I started with listening to podcasts for more learning as opposed to entertainment. And so I jumped into doing virtual assistant work, and I learned how to do all that through podcasting. And then I found out that there's such a thing as podcast management. And I had never thought about the actual background work behind the scenes of a podcast. I was one of those people that thought you hit the record button and you publish it and that's it. And boy, was I wrong. So I did that for about a year. And then I started talking to people more one-on-one outside of just the management. And I had a client come to me once and she said, "You know what? You do more mindset work and strategy work than you do actual like management work." And so that's when I jumped into doing the podcast launch strategy. And this past year, I started focusing more on the mindset piece more so than the tech, which is why I created my framework, which is BECAME, which stands for balance, communication and collaboration, authenticity, mindset, and empowerment. Because I am a firm believer, and which is why I love your podcast. I am a firm believer in that we all have a voice and our voices need to be heard. There's so much that we have to share of ourselves. And like I said, back in 2019, 2020 with the COVID, everybody was living a life of pretending that everything was okay and pretending that we had this perfect life. Everything was great. Everything was Instagram filters and things like that. And what COVID taught us in my eyes is that our shit-o-meter is so high. We don't want the BS anymore. We don't want the bullshit. We want truth. We want authenticity. And I really wish we could find a different word for authenticity because it's so overused. But that's what we need. That's what we want. We want connection. We don't want fake anymore. Those days are gone because we don't know how long we're going to be here. And for someone like me who was always in the background and never really spoke up, to know that something I say or something I share could help someone else, and I don't take that time to say it, it's selfish of me to hide in the background because I don't think I have something important to say. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with how it's going to affect other people. And I can say things the wrong way all the time, but the right person is going to hear what they need to hear. And if I don't say it, I can't change. It can change someone's life. Something as simple as sharing my story or sharing what I overcame and what got me here. So I hope I answered your question.
You answered it and so much more. So I have to say, not only did I have the sense that when you had seen my post on Need a Guest, which I got to give a shout out to the Need a Guest Facebook group for allowing us to have this connection. That's been an amazing community for allowing me to connect with a variety of different individuals with their stories. But even with that said, you saying some things here that I think even for myself, we were even talking about this before the show, that it's really about the connection that we're trying to achieve. And I like to call it the relationships because that's one of the values of even my business for that matter. Because without relationships, without that ability to formulate that connection with somebody else so that we can empower each other, we really are at a standstill. And I think the medium of podcasting, which is why I made a decision even early on, even after I opened my business to start this, was to not just create that forum, but noting exactly what you said. Some people are tired of just the ineffectiveness of whether we're reading about it, whether we are hearing somebody else's truth, which might not even be the truth. We just want to be in a society where we can hear each other. But even then, I've had guests that have talked about the differences between why we need to be careful about what we say, what we do, because it can be used against us. But even with that said, Aeoliana, you said some stuff here that I really want to break down because I think it makes a big impact as to why you created this. And one of the things that really stood out to me is that you said about true crime
Mhm,
dramas and stuff
mhm.
like that. And I'm imagining like you're one of those people who are like, oh, I'm going to be turned into 48 hours and watch what happened with this documentary of somebody that
Oh,
got
yeah.
murdered. Yeah.
I
So
am a serial killer documentary junkie.
what led you into that type of career in the first place with the corrections, probation, and then having that interest with that? I mean, did you think that you were able to give like inmates a voice? Like, tell me more about that because I think our listeners would like to see how that's even more connected.
It's funny. No one's ever asked me that before. Growing up, I've always been interested in law. When I was small, I thought I was going to be a nun, and then I found out what that was and what you have to do. And I was like, no, that's not me. But then it was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And then I worked out of college. I got my criminology bachelor's. And once I got working, I was working at the state attorney's office. And I realized that if I became an attorney, I was going to have to do one of two things that I wasn't comfortable with. I was either going to have to defend someone who was guilty, or I was going to have to prosecute someone who was innocent. And
Mm,
both of those things were something that I couldn't wrap my head around. I know a lot of people do one or the other, but for me, I was like, I can't be a prosecutor and convict someone that I know didn't do it. I can't rely on the system to do the right thing because we all know the system fails all the time because the system is built on people. And as people, as humans, we fail all the time. And then on the flip side, I was like, I cannot defend someone that I know is guilty. I could not put someone back on the street that I knew didn't belong there. And so I stopped that. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be an attorney. And instead, I jumped into doing paralegal work. And I've done paralegal work, family law, criminal law, immigration. I'm doing probate, which is elder care, Medicaid, things like that, estate planning. That's what I do now. I've done personal injury. I've done all of that. And the stories people share when they're going through, and the law firm I work for now, it's like he tells me that the stories people tell when they're in that dark hour of preparing estate plans for a deceased loved one, or they're preparing for the death of a loved one, or whatever that is, the stories are the same, whether you're going through a divorce or whether you're going through the hardest part of your life and getting arrested and going through the system that way. And all of the stories are the same, just in different scenarios. And hearing the stories and being with people in those tough times and hearing their stories and having them share, because 9 times out of 10, when people came into our office and they were in that tough period, all they needed was someone to listen. And from
mm,
that point, it was so important to me to understand the importance of people sharing their story, of people having someone to listen, not necessarily to judge, to criticize, to give advice, but just a listening ear. And I think nowadays people are understanding that. When I was younger, people didn't really understand. I come from a Hispanic background where, as a woman, your voice doesn't matter. You don't speak up. You hide behind the males in your family, and your opinions don't matter. And moving here to the United States, I've been here for almost 30 years, but it's completely different. And now with the Me Too movement and all of that stuff, it's like we have a voice. As women, we need to speak up. But everyone should speak up. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has a story. Everyone has something that they need to share, that they need to speak about. I always say this. I'm Catholic, so I'm religious, but I also do spirituality stuff like human design and all that. So I'm like all over the gamut. But for me,
You're a very versatile woman for sure. Yes.
I'm all over. I'm all over. But for me, I say if God put something in your heart, a message, something that you feel you have to say, it's because someone out there is waiting for you to say it. They're waiting to hear it from you, not from somebody else. They are waiting to hear it from you. And we do people a disservice when we shrink and we don't speak up and we stay small. And this is kind of deep and it's kind of dark, but you don't know how your message and sharing your message and sharing your voice could save someone's life, could help someone that is in the middle of one of their darkest times. And you just sharing your story doesn't have to be anything that they're going through, but it could be. And now you've shared that and they can look at it and they can say, damn, I'm going to be okay. I can do this. I'm going to be okay. And who are we to say that we aren't the answer to someone else's prayer when we have things like that? When we share stories and when we share things like that, we don't know that. We don't know how our voice and our story is going to resonate and who it's going to resonate with. So that's why I do what I do.
Wow. I have to say that you remind me so much of why this whole experience, even for me, started in the first place. I felt insignificant for such a long time, felt marginalized even with what I had. And you were absolutely right about what you're saying about women. And I'm a guy and I know that. And I totally know my lane with this. And I know I got to be careful of how I say this because I don't want to be one of those male chauvinist pigs that are like, yeah, you know what? You want me to work harder. No, I realize that there has to be a better opportunity, better balance for us to all work together. And I feel like being bullied growing up, even for myself, really showed that distinction of why everybody needs to be treated equally to
Mhm.
have that voice. So
Yeah.
everything that you just said the last few minutes, it all makes sense as to why having this sort of platform to help others to create that voice for themselves is not only fulfilling in many different aspects, but for some people, they don't have that ability to do that. They might not have some of the tools, the gifts, the resources that, say, you and I have to be able to project that kind of message. So
Mhm.
I love everything that you say because it's something that I've even said in my monologue episodes, even I've said with other guests, exactly about having that voice. Because if you don't say it and you hold it in, you might be doing somebody a disservice by
Mhm.
not sharing what is on your heart. So
Yeah.
thank you for signifying that and even honoring the fact that I know that it's something that needs to be consistently said,
And I'm going to
which is,
give you a
oh,
tip.
go ahead.
You said when you started that you wanted to make sure you said it the right way. You didn't want to sound like a male chauvinist. The fact that you thought that shows that you are not. So it
Mm,
didn't matter how you delivered it. The fact that you had that thought in your head that I want to make sure I say this the right way because I don't want to sound this way already shows your heart and that you aren't that kind of a person. You really want to do the right thing and share the stories the right way and give everything the importance. And some stories will be light, some stories will be heavy. And you're giving people that platform to be who they are and say what they feel without any kind of barrier. So kudos to you.
well, thank you for that. And for you to say that too, I have to acknowledge the fact that I've had many different experiences. We were talking about this even
Mhm.
too before the show of all number of people that have helped me change to where I'm at. I would not have been able to get to, say, 176 episodes if it wasn't for the fact that I had to put that work in to change myself,
Mm. Yeah.
to expand my mindset, my horizons of what it is that is a problem. And I realized too, through my work, through the things that I've even interacted with over a couple dozen clients, even for that matter, that we are all at some point or another on different pages when it comes to what we believe. And doesn't mean that we're wrong or
Mhm.
right or indifferent. It's just that we do need to be heard. We do need to be able to respect each other. And I think that's a key word, is being able to respect. And you say it as the mindset or the empowerment in your
Mhm.
framework, which, if I want to do a quick pivot to that, because part of what you even do for your business, the name of the business for my listeners is Top Shelf Virtual Services. I find that you are trying to create exactly that kind of conversation that we just had. You're
Mhm.
trying to help these sort of people do that. So, can you run through at a high level how exactly you achieve that? Because I saw on your website that you do a number of different things as it relates to management of podcasts, helping people with starting their podcasts, even for somebody that is starting out, even if they do want to get out on the airwaves, kind of like what you and I are doing even
Mhm.
today. What would be a single idea for them to get started with?
My biggest tip for people when they're wanting to start is knowing why you're starting it. Knowing what your mission is, what your purpose is. What are you trying to do with this podcast, creating this content, whatever it is? And I say that because so many people get into podcasting thinking, like I did, that you just record and you go. And there's so much more to that. And people don't realize only a third of podcasts that get started make it past 10 episodes. People quit very quickly because it is something that you don't go viral right away. It's something that it takes a lot of time to build, for people to find you, for people to listen to you, for people to follow you. It takes a long time. And if you don't have that firm, solid foundation of why you are doing it, when those tough times come, you're not going to want to keep going. You're not going to want to keep going. You're going to want to stop. You're going to be like, oh, this is useless. I'm not going to bother. But if you have that purpose and that intention in the back of your mind of why you're doing this, and money cannot be the answer. You can't say, I'm going to monetize and I'm going to be rich and that's how it's going to be. It can't be that. It has to be something beyond yourself. I'm a service-driven person. I'm a projector in human design. So my whole purpose in this world is to guide people and to see the bigger picture and to guide others where they need to be. And you can't do something like this. It's 1000% a passion project. You cannot do this if you are looking for a quick buck or if you're looking for material tangibles. You can't. You can't. You can use it to promote, you can use it for all of these things, but the deeper meaning behind why you're doing it has to be more than just to serve yourself.
I can't tell you how much I wanted to just scream on the top of the mountain to be like, yes, say it, girl, say it, because I felt that way for so long that I just had to keep churning this. It was something that wasn't going to happen overnight. And I'll be honest, I'm not the top 1%. I'm not the top 10%. I'd be lucky if I'm the top 50%. The reason I even do this is not just for the quick buck. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I am here to make money from it. I want people to be able to say, wow, this guy, Josh, is an amazing person. I want to work with him. I want to
Mhm.
be better person overall. I'm not going to deny it. But you nailed it in that this was something that even I've said to listeners that have known this for a very long time. I started this, and you didn't even know this. I started this as a 90-day project. I said, you know what? Let's see what happens in 90 days. If I really like it, great. If I don't, I can trash this and just forget about it.
Yep.
Well, here I am. I'm doing
Well
this
over 90 days.
well over 90 days, fell in love with it. And is it a lot of work yet? Yes, because I do everything from booking the guests,
Mhm.
having the discussion beforehand, doing the recording, editing the recording, so on and so forth. There's a lot of steps to it, but I've had support, I've had influence, I've had people that come around me to be able to say, you're doing the good work of that to help me. You're helping me, Josh. So when you say that, you're helping other people. I feel that. I feel that passion from you when it comes to that because it's not easy to start one of these. I will say hands down, it's an easy investment at the end of the day because I spent about less than $100 doing this equipment, buying it off of Amazon, just getting everything tested, set up with the software and everything. I probably lost more money than I actually gained, but did I learn a lot from it? Absolutely. So you're saying some of the things that I think for anybody that's ever considering starting one or even being part of one, just think about all the background with it. To kind of wrap this into understanding this a bit better, what would you say is the number one thing that most people starting out with a podcast fall into when it comes to like an issue or a situation that maybe they never anticipated? And I'm sure you have a lot of examples from clients that you've worked with, but what would you say is one thing that you often see as consistent across the board that is a problem? And how do you usually advise them to overcome that?
Probably, I would say thinking they need to over edit their stuff. And it's funny that you said you're not the top 1%. The majority of the time, the people that are in the top 1% is because they have the bankroll to do it. They have the bankroll and they have the staff to do it. Most podcasters are doing it all by themselves. And like the Rogans or like my husband watches Rich Eisen do his podcast. Those are people who have huge teams, lots of money, experience, and we're not going to be those people. So thinking that you have to edit yourself in order to make something that people are going to want to listen to. And the problem with that is that if you over edit yourself, if you look at your podcast and you listen to the audio and you say, I got to get rid of all of this stuff because it's too many pauses, too much ums, too much likes, whatever, and you don't sound like yourself, when someone comes to meet you, if you don't sound the way you do on your podcast, they're going to be like, who are you? You're not who I thought you were. So I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you want to start, editing is one of the hardest things to do. It takes the most time, and it's the one thing people source out right away. Keep it simple.
You're preaching to the choir because
Yeah.
I think about when I started out, I was like, oh, I have all these filler words. I got to get rid of the ums, the ahs,
No.
and all that. And then I started realizing a little bit later on, I'm going way too heavy on this.
Yep.
I need to let some of this in because the pauses actually do add to the conversation,
Yeah.
the nonverbal aspects. And it kind of made me start to think about my public speaking training and how that even translate into even podcasting for that matter. So you were saying some of the things that I made rookie mistakes in starting out that now, even then, sometimes I get myself a little too worked up and then I'm like, okay, take a back seat to this, let it simmer for a day and then take a listen to it again. And then
Yeah.
it actually sounds pretty good. And I actually do love even some of the later things that I've recorded as a result of that.
Yeah. And it
Oh, go ahead.
makes it a little bit easier for you starting out, for someone starting out. And I mean, I am the mayor of Imposter Syndrome Town. Welcome. If you are one of those, if you are in my town, welcome. So for me, I've never liked the sound of my voice. I've never liked recording myself. I've never liked being on a recording. But I realize that this is who I am. I have to be who I am. And if I constantly thought about what people thought about me, how people saw me, what people are thinking, which 9 times out of 10, nobody really cares about you. They're too worried about themselves. But we think that everybody's looking at us in a certain way. And I had to be like, okay, this is me. This is what I sound like. This is how I talk. And it is what it is. That's my phrase for 2024. It is what it is. And we just let it go.
It is a powerful phrase, even as we wrap up this year and enter into a new year, because I think that we need to continue that conversation of, is it okay to be just me?
Mhm.
And I think that this medium even creates that opportunity for us to expand on our thoughts, our imagination, our feelings, the way that we move ourselves forward.
Yeah.
Liana, we're almost out of time, but I want to ask you one more question that is on my mind. And it's really reading about more of your Became framework and a little bit about how it applies to podcasters. I want to read one part of this because it stood out to me. One of the things that you have on your website about how it helps podcasters, you said balance growth, which is funny because we're kind of talking about this concept in itself that we're balancing a little bit of what we can and cannot do. But you say, with an emphasis on balance, you can grow and succeed as a podcaster while maintaining harmony in other areas of your life, like work, family, and personal well being.
Yeah.
I have to ask you,
Sure.
you've been through some major medical things in your life to get to this point now that instead of thinking about yourself, you're thinking about others. And I think there's a balance between that. Do you think that you're still working on yourself with that? And if you are, what do you think has been the most effective thing that you might want to share that could help them achieve some of that balance growth as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think balance is something that a lot of people think is a destination. And I think balance is something that we never achieve, but we're always working towards. I'm constantly working on myself. My family is my guinea pigs. I have my son doing affirmations and doing EFT tapping, which if you listeners don't know what that is, please look it up. It is phenomenal when you're under stress, when you're anxious. It's one of the best things because I can't meditate. I would love to, but my mind just races so much. But EFT tapping has been something that's been phenomenal. And just learning more about who I am, about myself, about how I am in relationships, about how I am in relation to other people has been eye-opening. And the only thing that sucks about learning about yourself is that it opens up more cans of worms of shit that you don't want to deal with. And it's like an ongoing process. But it's one of the most rewarding ongoing shit trains I've ever been on.
Hmm.
Because the more I learn about myself, the more I'm able to serve others. The better mother I am, the better wife I am, the better friend I am. The more I'm able to, if someone comes to me with a problem, I'm able to realize that maybe they don't need fixing. Maybe they just need someone to listen. Maybe they just need someone to say, it's okay, I'm here. And that was something that years ago, I would have not been in that position. I would have assumed that if you came to me, it's because you want a solution. And realizing that's not the case in all the situations. Sometimes people, like I said, they just need an ear. They just need a hug. They just need a moment of your time. Everyone wants to feel like they're important and that they matter. And with the balance piece of it, I think so many people think that if you have a passion, and as a mother, a lot of women, when single dads and single parents can relate to this, you think that time for you is selfish. You can't pursue your passion and hold a full-time job to provide for your family. You can't do both. And the fact of the matter is we're multifaceted. There's different aspects of ourselves. And we can be all of these things. We just need to take the time to focus on one thing at a time and be great for 10 minutes at that one thing and then move on to something else or however long you want to do it. We can do all the things. We just can't do all the things at the same time.
That is some sound advice that even me, myself, has to continue learning, even as I build out my own business and actually work a full-time job, because that's one thing I didn't say to you too. I do both. But,
Same. I
but,
feel you.
but yeah, I feel you too. But part of it is that we will get there if we continue to have that right mindset and have that balance. So that's
Yeah.
why I loved asking you that question. I knew you would have some amazing insights with that. So Aeoliana, I'm going to give you the last few minutes here. I would love for you to pitch yourself about your business, Top Shelf Virtual Services. How can people get in contact with you? If they're interested in starting a podcast, maybe they want to reach out to you. Maybe they have an existing podcast. Maybe they want to get some management from you, how can they do all of that? I'm going to give you the last few minutes to give you some time to pitch us.
Sure. Like you said, my business is Top Shelf Virtual Services, and I do a lot of podcast launch strategy where we go in. I have strategy calls available. You can go on my website, www.topshelfvirtualservices.com/everything-page. And that will put you right into my everything page. I have free resources there. If you don't know how to find your podcast platform, I have a worksheet in there, how to find your vision, your values, your mission, pretty much everything in there. And there, I also have paid services and resources there as well. I have a ton of workshops that I've done, podcast episodes I've been in, things like that. You can book right on my website a free 15-minute clarity call. So if there's anything that you're stuck on, no charge. I will not pitch you. I do not pitch in my calls. Just 15 minutes, pick my brain, whatever you need. You can sign up for my newsletter there as well. A couple weeks ago, I threw out a free 60-minute strategy call for the people on my email list. I have a blog also, and that goes out every Friday. A new blog post goes out every Friday. So there's a ton of free ways to get in touch with me. You can follow me on Instagram. It's aeoliana.elliott. I am on the TikTok. That is Aeoliana Podcast Strategy. If you want to find me, I post daily. I have a 365. I don't know what day we're on right now, but I'm posting a daily affirmation for podcasters through Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And I do that every day. You can go into my highlights and you can watch the old ones. And yeah, I would love to help you find your voice, find your message, and get it out there to the world, to the people that need to hear it. So again, the website is Top Shelf Virtual Services. You can see me, you can see my family, you can read about me, you can read about my services. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out in any way that suits you. And I would love to help.
Fair disclosure, there will be some hockey talk involved too.
Oh, 1000%. Yes. I am a hockey mom. I am a hockey
Don't worry.
mom.
The Philadelphia Flyers up here located near me, they probably would have a bone to pick with where you are located at.
Go Lightning. Go Lightning.
Yeah, there you go. I knew you would give a shout out if I opened the door. But
Of
even with
course,
that
I
door
will run
open-
right through that door.
Yeah, exactly. But even with that door open, Aeoliana, I think you opening the door for so many other people too to
Thank
find
you.
their voice.
That's my
And
purpose.
that is your purpose. And to know that we have people in this world that want to find that purpose in a medium such as podcasts, which number one is rapidly growing. It's still
Mhm.
one of the things that is so easy to go into. But like you said, so many people burn out with it. I have to tell you that for people that have come through stories like yourself to be able to get to the other side, to become the best versions of themselves, I appreciate you helping others to get along the same sort of trajectory, to get through that, to overcome barriers that might exist. So, for all those reasons, Aeoliana, thanks for being on Speaking from the Heart. I really appreciate our conversation, the wealth of information, and more importantly, the kind heart that you have.
Thank you so much for having me. Hopefully, your listeners got something and enjoyed it. And hope it helped someone to realize that they matter. Their voice matters, and someone wants to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. We do all matter. And I really think that we need to continue having that conversation of why we all matter too. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I want to thank Aeoliana for being part of the show. It's fascinating to me that somebody that has turned a career where you're passionately helping others get back into society helps to turn others into this vision of relearning skills, opportunities, and other things that maybe we've learned at one time in our lives, but being able to repurpose it to build a new foundation for a career, let alone even a skill for that matter, is really exhilarating to me. The last time I could think of an episode like this, we have to go all the way back to episode number 4 with my good friend Trisha Renzi, who was on the show talking about how she went through these obstacles of having brain surgery done and reteaching herself ways in which she can function in society. And I think that hearing these kinds of stories, especially with her insight, really shines a light on today's guest on how we can fall in love with a concept, even a podcast for that matter, and be able to exemplify our greatness, finding the way in which we can make a true impact. And you can sense the passion even in this conversation today, because as you're trying to pretend to do things that you might be just going through life, muddling along, you start to ask yourself, is this really the truth that I want to live? Is this how I authentically want to be represented? And I think that we all have something to share, whether we want to marginalize it or not. I think that we have something that we have to give birth to, whether that is an inherent skill or ability, or work on something that's really hard, maybe challenging, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone so that we can make that all-determining impact on others. Perhaps what you're serving is not actually serving something in the first place, which is why you can't always rely on the system. And I think Aeoliana's story really points back to the fact that we have all these different situations. We all have these different things that we're going through. We have to find passion in exemplifying what we want to get out of it. And if the system doesn't serve us, what we're actually trying to do, whether that is in a career, we have to forge a new path forward. Which is why stories, sharing them, creating that connection by learning morals, values, lessons that we can apply to in our own lives really makes this an important subject in itself. We want to feel like we are listened. I know, because I'm doing this and I want you to listen to me. But even though I want you to listen, it means that I have to deliver on something that you will get a tangible benefit out of. You have to feel heard. But what if that message, that story that you have to share, can potentially save our life? It might be able to save other people's lives, which is why giving back, giving in itself, the concept of actually sharing your resources, sharing what is your time, is really important. Figuring out that why, figuring out why you're creating that content, why you're doing that in the first place, is really, truly important for us to have that in the back of our minds. I think that building that foundation, having that firm footing so that we are able to be service-oriented, is something that we have to figure out every single time that we're working on a client, we're working with somebody that is trying to overcome some sort of obstacle, maybe even figuring out in our own lives what it means to be able to make ends meet. What is it that we have to do to work even harder? That human design driven system, that ability for us to have staff, to bankroll that, means that we have to create an experience that everybody can enjoy. That means that we have to create meaningful content. And I think that balancing the growth and learning about ourselves at the same time allows us to figure out what is it that we can piecemeal out, what is it that we're able to work on so that we can have creative control. But more importantly, we have to be able to open more doors. We have to be able to fly open all the things that we have that are in store for us. It's not any secret. Knowing that we're here and knowing that we're able to help us is not the only thing that we can do. Even if we seek out that help from others, we have to be willing to also say to ourselves that we want more, which is why I love this became framework that Aeoliana talked about. This authenticity aspect, which is even the foundation of this podcast itself, means that we have to be willing to share our conversations about our own lives. We have to open doors that otherwise would have been closed and be willing to speak from our hearts. That's why I create this context. That's what my purpose is, ladies and gentlemen, of being able to do this in the first place. But I get it. If you live through life and you live through experiences that are tough and they're really challenging in their own right, why wonder it's so difficult for us to be glamorized, to be galore by all the different choices that we have? I know that it's easy for us to tune out of something that somebody is saying, especially if it speaks truth in our own lives, because maybe we're not ready to swallow that pill. Maybe we're not willing to move ourselves forward in the right direction. And that isn't because we're afraid of it. It isn't because we're not willing to take it on. There's something more that is happening beneath the surface. It's something that sometimes you can't quite put words to. It means that you have to figure out, why is this feeling always happening all the time? It reminds me of what my life has been. I have been learning a lot about my own childhood growing up and why it's been so difficult sometimes to even move myself into a positive direction. Why do I keep doing the same things wrong over and over and over again? Because I haven't made the right decisions. The content that I was creating for myself was not great. And by not having that consistent, solid plan in which I was always going back to my own 2 out of 10 ways, being depressed, feeling like everything was hopeless, and oh yes, mimicking even what my parents were doing, was not helping me whatsoever. I can only imagine the skills that we can learn if we're just willing to break out of those comfort zones. If we're able to say to ourselves that we can have that best opportunity in our lives, which I just talked about in the previous episode before today's. It's something that when we fall in love with a concept, even of ourselves, if we're willing to give ourselves grace when we do make mistakes, it's okay to be able to say that we are falling behind for right now, but we're going to catch up. I've learned that even people generate different types of attitudes when it comes to these kinds of subjects, which recently I started reading Thomas Erickson's Surrounded by Idiots, which, no, when you hear the book title, it's not talking about how you deal with idiots. It's actually talking about the DISC methodology, which if you've never heard of, deals with how you handle and respond to different types of personalities and what your personality is. But this book goes a little bit deeper than just talking about DISC, but at its simplistic nature, talking about different colors in which we have different characteristics that we are as human beings. As somebody that has been a long life learner of how we identify with each other and how we connect on a variety of different levels, I've learned a thing or two about what it means to have a different personality, have a different connection with someone, but yet at the same time, figuring out what is it that I really want to have with them, what it means to serve my interests but also serve theirs. And story sharing is something that has helped me so much in creating that connection with others. The importance for us to know our why so that we can create that content, to be able to have that firm, solid foundation, means that we have to keep on growing. We have to keep on leading the way. Whether that is talking to others, being able to express ourselves, means that we have to be extroverted in our own way. And it's not the way that you normally think. It could be playing a game in which you're strategizing with someone else. It could be attending a book club in which you discuss what a book is and what it contemporarily means in our culture. It could be attending a play, looking at all the characters and studying what it means for them to interact with each other. I know that those might be all boring things, especially in this day and age where we can watch reels, TikTok videos, and so much more. But the truth of the matter is that we have to get back to the basics. As I've been stressing in more recent episodes, those basics help us to learn, to help us find that foundation of our why. But more importantly, we can help others through that. Even Aeoliana's framework of balance, communication, authenticity, mindset mastery, and empowerment can all change if you're just willing to help yourself start your journey today. You don't have to be a podcast host. You don't even have to be a guest. All you need is the commitment and the willingness to say to yourself that through your decisions, through your actions, through the things that have been what it is, you are able to help others achieve greatness. You can help them find all those things and so much more if you're just willing to make that difference, not just in yourself, but in others as well. But hey, if you're willing to be a guest, if you're willing to be able to share your story, if you're willing to tell your talent, I think that many people would not only give you a microphone in which you can speak into, but knowing that you're here, knowing that you're able to do so much more, just shows a testimony to the empowerment of the human race and what we're capable of adapting to, especially in this season in which we're always adapting to the ever-changing climate, to the ever-changing circumstances, but remembering that we all come from somewhere and we all start at a certain point. It's not just about me, myself, and I. It also means involving you in learning all the lessons that I have learned so you can become better. Thanks for listening to episode number 176 of Speaking from the Heart, and I look forward to hearing from your heart very soon.
Thanks for listening. For more information about our podcast and future shows, search for Speaking from the Heart to subscribe and be notified wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit us at www.yourspeakingvoice.biz for more information about potential services that can help you create the best version of yourself. See you next time.